Welcome all again. Welcome friends and subscribers and new viewers and Roger Waters and Pink Floyd fans, because today we're talking about Roger Waters' The Lockdown Sessions. Right there in all its glory. And kind of actually a creepy cover, just because of how desolate. There's no one out on the roads, no one in the shops, no one even in the windows, though I assume people are inside there. But the Lockdown Sessions, now this was recorded over quite a span of time, because Roger Waters and his touring band basically did what a lot of musicians did, a lot of seasoned musicians and a lot of new musicians, and when they were stuck in their houses like the rest of us, they basically thought, well, we'll put on a show for our fans. But Roger did it one song at a time. I did see some performers do like whole shows or set lists or Q&As with some acoustic stuff, and everyone was doing different things. And he started it with Mother, which is the one that begins this album, which is the song that begins this album. And open side A, and that was dropped in May. I remember watching that one, and of course Lucius are with them, and the rest of the band, who we're gonna talk about right here. So we got obviously Mr. Waters himself on vocals, guitar, and piano, and then we got Gus Seifert on bass and cellos. He also produced, engineered, and mixed all this this great material on this album. Joe Waronker, there you go. I knew I would mess that one up when I was looking at this earlier. Drums and percussion. Dave Kilminster on guitar and rhythm guitar. He does a great job. Jonathan Wilson on guitar. Jon Carin, longtime collaborator. Jon Carin, who's played both with Waters and the Gilmore-led Floyd. And he's an amazing musician. He plays on here. Lucius, which consists of Jess Wolfe and Holly, pardon me ahead of time, but Lasig on vocals. And Lucius are a duo that they have their own material and their own albums, and we saw them with Mr. Waters. I guess that was 2017, like 6 years ago. And then Bo Coster plays Hammond, all tracks except the opener Mother, and Ian Ritchie on sax for Two Suns in the Sunset, which is the song, and the sax part are some of the highlights of the record. So recorded at everyone's homes, do what I do, set up an iPhone, and, just plug in the mic and start playing guitar. And then, of course, tacked on at the very end is Comfortably Numb, the 2022 version. They're just calling Comfortably Numb 2022. So that means it's already outdated. But, yeah, that has a different lineup. Just a little bit. You got Jonathan Wilson on harmonium, synth, guitar, and vocals, which is obviously vocals instead of playing guitar. Shanae Johnson on vocals, Amanda Belair on vocals, and it's very interesting because it's like a kind of it sounds like a funeral dirge, and it's very kind of downtrodden and would be very hard to sell to the rockist crew and the classic rock purists. And this isn't going to replace Comfortably Numb in my list of favorite well, it's not Floyd, but favorite Floyd-related tunes or Roger Waters tunes. But it's very interesting to have this version, I would say, and I really appreciate this version. And I'm really glad because, when we saw him live the second time, I've only had the pleasure of seeing him live twice, but it just got really lost. Like, he opened the show with it, which I thought was kind of weird, and because it was in a big stadium, and this is the problem with Waters and a lot of the seasoned veterans, is they play the big stadiums because that's where the big bucks are, and to be fair, supply and demand, that's where the most fans are. but it just got so lost, and you couldn't even really hear the vocals that well. And I said it kind of sounds like a funeral dirge here, but it works really well, and it's really well produced on the record and listening at home. But I must say, like, live, it didn't really work at all, and considering it opened the show, yeah, I don't know if the two people I was with were kind of worried. I was, underneath it all, I was kind of worried. I was like, is it all gonna be like this? Like, this is kind of bad. And but I think it was just really bad acoustics, because that kind of subtle stuff doesn't really work in the stadium. I will say it works really well here, in my opinion. The fan consensus is kind of based. It's based. It's kind of mixed on that one, to be fair. And, that happens anytime anyone messes with the classics, and we're right on the verge of getting Roger Waters' Dark Side of the Moon, so people are just already so mad based on the first few singles there. Technically 4, but Speak to Me, Breathe, they kind of go together. But I kind of find it interesting, like, and especially with these, like, this is such, like, especially the final cut songs on here, Two Suns in the Sunset and The Gunner's Dream, very good choices, definitely two of the best songs on the final cut. And I've always really liked the final cut. I know it's kind of one of the black sheeps of their discography, I would say, and it's definitely the black sheep of anything from 71 going forward. Even if I look to, like, Obscured by Clouds, it's still kind of the black sheep record, I would say. And yeah, these songs are just so well produced here, and they just really they almost sound more like a Pink Floyd production than they did on the final cut, which was a Pink Floyd record, but really was it? It always seemed more like a Roger Waters solo record, and it always sounded more like it. And it was just Roger and David just trying to keep it together long enough to get that material out there, because the band was so fragmented, and Roger had already, fired Rick, and Nick's confidence was also kind of down. And just the wall, I think, really kind of tarnished everything for the band, at least relationship-wise, as a unit. So it's really interesting. I would love to hear him do some more final cut stuff. Like, I would love to hear, say, the title track redone one of these days. I did not mean that pun, but that was a good one. Not final cut, though. And yeah, definitely some of the other tracks, and other tracks kind of from that era, like, I don't know, you could never really improve upon When the Tigers Broke Free, but that would be really interesting. So yeah, Mother's great. I mean, you have Lucius doing the David Gilmour parts, and that sounds incredible. Two Suns in the Sunset is amazing. Vera, it's just listed as Vera, but they could have easily gone Vera / Bring the Boys Back Home, because it's a reimagining of both those mini songs, I like to call them, on the wall. And those are kind of interesting, very interesting choices, because, they're kind of not full, fleshed out songs, but he kind of made them that here. But lyrically, they're a lot simpler than a lot of stuff that is on the wall, maybe, or especially Roger Waters' solo stuff. So it's kind of interesting, but I feel like maybe he wanted to go back and make Vera kind of a full-fledged song, and especially Bring the Boys Back Home, because on the album it's that big sweeping chant, and it's a lot of other people's voices, and maybe he wanted to bring it back to what his demos of The Wall sounded like with that track, so it doesn't get lost in the grand production of the concept album that kind of overarcs the whole thing. So that's side A. Mother, Two Suns in the Sunset, and Vera, which I'll call Vera / Bring the Boys Back Home. And then side B is The Gunner's Dream, which, like I said, is my other highlight to Two Suns. The Bravery of Being Out of Range, which is off my, by far, and I love all his solo albums, but by far my favorite is Amused to Death, and I always loved The Bravery of Being Out of Range. So it's nice to hear that, and as usual, my cat starts meowing as soon as I record a video. So yeah, the bravery of being out of range, which we also saw on the tour, which I guess was when the COVID restrictions were kind of letting up just a little bit. And I was really happy he was playing that, because it's almost like a deep cut if he plays anything off a solo album, which is kind of sad to say, but it's true, because people don't come out in droves and buy your solo record when you're from a band like Pink Floyd, unfortunately. As great as those solo albums are, they'll never get as much airplay. And shining a light on this song's really nice again, and I love this version because when we saw it live, I was with my my better half and my dad as well, and I was so glad because my dad's been a long Pink Floyd fan, like 40 years, and I remember trying to play him the studio cut of a Bravery of Being Out of Range, and he didn't really see why I liked it so much, and I feel like it was because he couldn't really hear the lyrics. Like, the way it's produced, he couldn't really hear it very well. And you know, I know them because of the internet, and I've had that album for a while, but you know, I get it. You know, they're kind of a little bit lost in the production. He's hard to hear over the instrumentation, and I thought when he does it live stripped down, this is great. Like, you know, my dad will be able to appreciate the lyrics. And then again, the same thing as Comfortably Numb. It all just kind of got lost in the stadium. You couldn't really hear what Roger was saying. If I didn't know the lyrics, I wouldn't really know what he was saying, other than the refrain of, you know, the bravery of being out of range. Sing that phrase over and over. But the rest of the song, So it's nice to have this version, because it's well produced and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then you got Comfortably Numb 2022, which ends the whole thing and the whole deal and the whole project here. So, yeah, it's a gatefold. I didn't show that off. So that's a nice shot of Roger laying down a track and all his cohorts. Am I showing that right? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's probably not. I mean, only the diehards probably really bought it. It dropped in the spring, and this physical copy didn't ship out to me till probably a couple months ago. You know, when you're busy in the summertime, but you know, I played it right away, and I played it when it started streaming, so I knew what I was getting into. Of course, there's a story that Roger writes there, and he, you know, he's typical Roger. He says, you know, how am I going to film this? Put my iPhone on a stand and press record. Brilliant. Then you're on the wrong side of the camera. And he says schlum, and there's lots of ellipses that are way more than 3 dots most of the time. It's so, like, he says something about the encores ... It's right there kind of in the center right now. And then he does 2 more dots, and the computer always, like, auto-corrects, so it groups the 3 together, and then there's just 2 random ones. Like, it's just so off the cuff. It's so Roger. And he says a joke, so hard to find a loyal crew these days. Joke, all you fucking trolls. Like, what, Roger? Oh, and he says something else I wanted to mention. There's in the last verse of Bringing the Boys Back Home, it's Dave Kilminster does he shreds on it, and he's unleashing, or channeling, Roger says, but I say unleashing his inner Steve Vai and Eddie Van Halen. And I was so thinking that when I was listening to it. I'm like, yes. Yeah. But, you know, his dark sense of humor, and he writes like he speaks, that's for sure. But in the end, it says love R, so that's very nice, Roger. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for this product, because, you know, the diehard fans, and I'll include myself there, definitely, you know, we like to have this product, and it's really cool, because there were so many musicians that were, you know, doing YouTube vids and live streams and that, and none of it will ever be saved. And, you know, thank you, Roger, for, you know, saving for that, for us to listen to that. And, you know, obviously we don't have the visual aspect, but really, I can just picture it because, I watched them, but even if I didn't, just picture Roger sitting in his home, strumming an acoustic guitar and singing out Mother for You. And it just sounds really good, like all these years later, 40 years later. These are really good versions. And like I said, they probably won't replace the originals for anybody, but they don't really have to. They stand on their own, and the two Final Cut ones, like I said, are just so well produced. Like, I'm really happy to have those ones. Yeah, so much recommended, and just want to get some goodwill out there before the new album drops. So this is kind of more timely than I imagined. But then, all the bad press and reviews are gonna come out, and I mean, when I heard the first single for the new album, not to give anything away, because I'm gonna sit down and listen to it like all the other Floyd fans when it drops in a couple weeks, but when I heard the first single, I was kind of disgusted. I thought, this is probably the worst thing Roger ever did, and what is he thinking, really? And really, whenever an artist re-records something, there's a lot of, like, kind of ill will towards it. But really, I mean, then he released Time. It was Money first, I failed to say that. And then it was Time a few weeks later in the rollout. And now, just recently, we got Speak to Me and Breathe. And I'm actually quite looking forward to hearing the rest. Like, it doesn't have the musicality of the Dark Side of the Moon original, but it's not supposed to. He's trying to, like, it's more spoken word and letting the words speak for themselves, because, and he did kind of dig the original recording. Like, he did make kind of a dig towards it and towards his old bandmates, and said, we were just young and silly, and the message is kind of lost, even though it's one of the most famous albums of all time. I disagree with that, but I do kind of artistically see why he's redoing it. I mean, I'll be completely honest, I'd rather have a new solo record, and he obviously has some songs behind him since the last one dropped like 5 or 6 years ago, which was a great record, by the way. The Nigel Godrich produced one, Is This the Life We Really Want? So I'd rather hear, like, him record The Bar in a studio and all those other songs he's probably sitting on. But hey, I'll take it. I'm looking forward to it. Time and Speak to Me, Breathe made a lot more sense than Money. And then when I played the single on streaming and it just played all four, it's like, okay, I mean, I'm kind of filling in the gap, like thinking, what's he going to do with Great Gig in the Sky, for instance? Like, that'll be really interesting. And On the Run, is he just going to speak through those? It'll be interesting. I'm actually looking forward to it, and no one else is. They're like, we're doomed, but yeah, anyway, I mean, again, this might have been missed by a lot of people, so pick this thing up if you're a Roger Waters fan. I think very few people that are actually engaged with his solo work will be disappointed. Very few. If you've never heard a Roger Waters solo record before and you're coming off just the popular Pink Floyd records, like the 5 that sold the most copies, you might be disappointed. It might not be to your taste. He's kind of got his own style, of course, in his solo stuff. But yeah, long story long, very recommended, the Lockdown Sessions. Grab it at your local store now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll probably be back in a day or two with some more reviews. There's going to be a lot more. I'm, finally going to get some more videos on this channel because the gap's been too long. And definitely I'll be talking about the Roger Waters Dark Side of the Moon. No matter which way I really fall on that one, I'm going to definitely be discussing it. So that'll be pretty interesting. And let me know what you think. Like, what's your favorite song on this one? And yeah, we'll just talk Pink Floyd in the comments. I've really appreciated all the comments that still fly in, even when the channel went inactive for about a month. So that's really cool. That's what it's all about, the comments and the engagement. That's the fun part. So I've rambled on a little too long, but there you go. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Peace and love to everyone out there, and we'll catch you in another video. Thanks so much, everyone. Adios.